This podcast contains explicit language and is for mature audiences only. If you're under 18, this show is intended more for your parents.
So, take that mental image with you and get back to doing your homework. We are a couple choosing to share our personal experiences and opinions that should in no way be misconstrued as professional advice.
Welcome, everyone. This is episode number 1 of our podcast named We Got a Thing. I'm Mr. Jones.
And I'm Mrs. Jones.
And it is October 2014. Our first take at this. We hope to get our podcast up, published in the next couple of weeks, so probably be in November. We're starting this podcast with the purpose of creating a conversation between Mr. and Mrs. Jones and, of course, you, around topics and adventures in the swinging lifestyle and sex-positive, open-minded relationships.
So we have spent the past few months actually deciding to do this podcast and making sure this is something that we were committed to for the long haul and figuring out what kind of equipment we needed. And then, of course, you have to find a design for your website and a title for your podcast and pseudonyms that you can use on air, because we are certainly not out to our friends. So all of this planning has happened over the summer, and we're just kind of ready to get started. So just as kind of a brief introduction to ourselves, we decided to choose the title We Got a Thing because we've been married for a long time, and we've always known that we had something special. And we have been in the lifestyle for about a year now, and we realized that we really have something between us that is solid, and it's a special thing. And it's become more special ever since we started swinging, because we realize how solid we are and how connected we are. So, the song Me and Mrs. Jones has always been on the radio since we can remember, and we've just enjoyed the song in general, and now that whole line, we've got a thing going on. Our thing is kind of taken on a new meaning, and our thing is kind of secret, which is really cool because usually we're pretty open with everybody. So for us to have like the secret thing in our relationship, it's a pretty special part of our relationship. So hence the names Me and Mrs. Jones have kind of played out of that song. Yeah,
and the word thing is so subjective that it's evolving and definitely becoming a whole lot more spicy, especially in the past year. And like Mrs. Jones was saying, we've been doing a whole lot of research. We've been listening to a lot of different podcasts, but the preparation over the past few months has been not just, is this something that we want to do? Do we really want to put our voices out there and our story out there? But how do we want to do that? And so I guess I volunteered myself to take care of all of the technical aspects of it. So it's a lot of web designing myself and researching the equipment that we wanted to use and coming up with original artwork and licensing music and every other thing that you have to think about. But we decided to, wait and make sure that we were ready so that we had the quality of podcast that we expect of ourselves. And obviously this is going to get better. This is our first try at this. And so here goes.
Well, as far as the artwork goes, we're trying to figure out, what kind of style do we want to our podcast? Do we want it to be like really super sexy, or do we want it to be kind of fun and whimsical? And, we spent a long time kind of talking about it, and we went on iTunes and looked at all the little icons that all the other podcasters are using. And I mean, the bottom line is that Mr. Jones has always had a little bit of a thing for Jessica Rabbit from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, I mean, cartoons in general were a big influence in my life. Yeah. And then, of course, when I was a big fan of Bugs Bunny, and then, of course, when Jessica Rabbit came along, that pretty much put me over the top.
So when we approached a graphic artist and we had her help design, we sent her some images of Jessica Rabbit and said, can you kind of spring off of that? And that's where our cute little redhead girl came from. So she's kind of an image that's showing that we are inviting people into our relationship. She's kind of sitting there enjoying herself with a martini. I just happen to like martinis. I just happen to be a redhead with green eyes. And my boobs aren't that big, though. Sorry, guys.
Well, yeah, you're a runner, so you have nice runner's legs.
I do have, I do have her legs. Well, I'm not as tall as her, though, but in my dreams, maybe someday.
I think there's a resemblance. Yeah, so that pretty much tells the story about some of the background. We hope to publish a podcast about, on average, once a month. We'll see how it goes. We want to share our experiences, and we've only been doing this for about a year. So tonight we're generally going to have a few different segments of the podcast, and they'll be a lot different than what we're doing tonight.
So not only are we doing the podcast for everybody out there listening, but honestly, we're kind of doing it for ourselves because, as we talk to each other, we're like, oh my gosh, that's a podcast topic. And I have a note in my phone, and it's just, a super long note because every time we talk about something, I'm going to forget if I don't write it down. So I have this note in my iPhone, and I just am constantly typing things in there as things come up in our conversation. So it really, kind of planning this out really helps us be mindful about, when something comes up in our minds, we need to share it with the other person to kind of get their take on it. Because, when you're in the lifestyle and you're meeting other couples, you're trying to find a four-way connection, and everybody has a different perspective and a different, I guess, level of interest. So that communication we have found has just been so important, and you can't assume you know somebody well enough to know what they're thinking because you don't.
Right. And that's, we've learned so much, and that touches on one of the things that, even after, as long as we've been together, you can say, we communicate, we have good communication skills, and we know this about ourselves, and we know what we like and what we don't like. But really what I've learned in the past year is all of that goes out the window. As you experience new things with new people and new conversations, you learn a lot about yourself. And so things that even a year ago we said that we couldn't imagine ourselves doing or think about doing, we're in fact doing now. So, to always have this open mind that, we're not going to say always and never too much here, because who knows what's going to happen. As long as we're communicating, as long as we're growing as a couple, as long as we're having fun. But our main focus is on each other, kind of in a selfish way. But I think that's good. I think, our relationship is our priority in this. And, it would be great that we find other people that we connect with and that we respect and socialize with. But, ultimately it comes down to the two of us and our relationship.
Well, and the couples that we're looking for, we hope have that same feeling. That, they're there to take care of each other and to have fun and please one another, and then we're just part of that, and
right.
Vice versa. I mean, to me, those are the kind of couples we're looking for. I know there's every scenario imaginable in the lifestyle, and there's a fit for everybody somewhere. But, for Mr. Jones and I, we're looking more to connect with couples that are like-minded as us, so that we feel safe and secure, and we want them to feel safe and secure as well.
Yeah, and the longer that we're in this, and there are some extremely healthy relationships with folks in the lifestyle, and it's easier to pick those out, and even when it's somebody or a couple who you don't have that physical attraction to, and the things that are necessary to play with. These are just great people that you want to have a conversation with, and you're not. There's no intimidation. There's no judgment. And so you can have a great conversation with somebody. And if you don't play together, I mean, obviously that's why everybody's in this. But there seems to be so much respect for everyone, and people are just interested in stories. And so that's what we want to do is we want to make this about our stories. and how other people have influenced us. You had mentioned earlier about podcasts, and when we first started doing some research, we kind of stumbled across podcasting. We really never had listened to many podcasts before, but once we realized all this information was out there and from real people, not from people who are, doctors or therapists or, who you'd consider a professional. I mean, we just enjoy listening to real people tell real stories and, share their struggles and share, some of the successes that they've had. And so podcasts were a pretty big influence on us as we were making our decision as to whether we should take this step or not.
So, we're hoping that we can have the same influence on our listeners. Swinging isn't for everybody. I mean, we kind of have to be frank about that. It can really screw up a relationship that isn't a relationship that has a lot of open communication. It can be pretty scary in the best of relationships. So if you have any misunderstandings between the two of you, or if you have motivations that you're not sharing with your partner, it can really it can damage a relationship. But at the same time, if you go in it together and you're like-minded and you're communicating and you're being really honest with one another about how you feel about trying different things and being honest in the moment to make sure that you're not creating a situation where you or your partner is going to feel uncomfortable, then it can really have a positive influence on your sexual relationship and your emotional relationship as a whole.
Right. And if you, I think one of the things that I learned on, and we'll talk more about this in another podcast, but, to be able to trust somebody enough to step back when you do have a strange feeling or something occurs that you're not quite comfortable with. At first, I think first reaction to a lot of people is, let's just run, let's just get away from this, and let's just, this was a mistake. And I think what we learned early on is, let's focus on what's causing that, because we know our relationship is solid. We know how we feel about each other. So, kind of assessing what it is that's causing you to feel that way, and then working through it together, and again, in a non-judgmental way, but, sharing and exploring these things together. And then as you grow as an individual, as you get, beyond that, and that happens once or twice, and then you get a little bit more confident that, even if we do slip up, even if we make a bad judgment call, or, if we feel uncomfortable, it's not the end of the world. We're going to communicate about it. We're going to talk about it. And we're going to learn from that. And then ultimately what we found is it brings us closer in all the cases so far that we've had together.
So as we move forward throughout, future episodes of the podcast, we are going to discuss both pros and cons of the lifestyle, because we want to keep it balanced and not only talk about the wild, sexy, crazy times we've had, which we want to talk about, and I hope you guys want to hear about.
We will.
But, we need to keep it real, too, because if you're having issues at the moment in your relationship, we want you to know that it's okay, and it can be worked through, and it needs to be worked through, and to not feel defeated, I guess, because, at one point a few months ago, I remember looking at Mr. Jones and saying, I don't like this feeling and I'm out. And, luckily I didn't really mean that, and we were able to work through it. And now we're in a really safe place. And lately I think we've been very relaxed when we are with other people and just really starting to understand what it's all about. I think we've kind of finally gotten over the hump, so to speak.
Right. So, so that takes us to our segment number one. We're going to do 3 segments in each podcast, and tonight we'd like to introduce ourselves, so you'll know a little bit more about us, and we hope that helps you understand where we're coming from and helps you apply some of the things that we've experienced to your relationship, because everybody has a different relationship. And again, we're not advocating that this is the way that it should work in your life, or in your lives, or in your relationships. So a little bit about us. As I said, we just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary last week, and I can't believe it's been 30 years, 30 amazing years. We live on the East Coast, and a lot of the activity that we've experienced so far in the lifestyle mostly has been with traveling out of town, going to Mexico, going to New Orleans, going to the West Coast on travel and meeting people out there. We're just now getting to a place where, we're connecting with some local groups in the lifestyle community, which is really a good thing. So again, on the East Coast, especially in the Mid-Atlantic area, people seem to be a whole lot more buried underground when it comes to lifestyle. Maybe it has something to do with the politics in the area and the Puritan society here on the East Coast, but we are now running into some people and connecting and making some networking here on the East Coast. So our children are older adults, and that puts us in a situation. Sorry about that for you all who have to get babysitters and be concerned about childcare. We've been through that, and certainly are enjoying this point in our lives when, we can just say, let's do this, or let's go there, or let's do this. And if somebody contacts us, we don't have that worry as we did a few years ago with, making sure the kids were taken care of. So it's been hitting 50 has been a great, it's been one of the benefits of having older children. We're involved in our church, and we've been involved in church for quite a few years. We're both working professionals. We have very active vanilla lives. We've
lived in our community for 27 years, so we
Right.
we have friends. When our kids were involved in things, we were friends with parents, and we've maintained those connections over the years, and so we have a lot of friends that are vanilla, and they have no idea why we're busy on the weekends now and can't always go out to dinner with them when they all get together. But we're just not ready to share any of this with them yet.
Right. But we do. We still have a very active vanilla, and my family is in the area. I have a large family, so we spend a lot of time with them, and we really enjoy that as well. So, the lifestyle definitely is not prioritized in our lives right now, but it's a big part of what we're doing. And I suspect as we, continue to meet people and do things together, that that'll continue to grow. Also, we're both avid runners. We've been running now for the past 4 or 5 years, and really enjoy doing that together. Even though we don't run a whole lot together, it's
That's because Mr. Jones is really, really fast. And then there's me,
well,
but that's okay.
No, it's a lot of it's because you like running in the afternoon and I like running in the morning.
That's true. I'm not a morning person.
Yeah. So we've done, a lot of different races together. We've run marathons together, and we're looking forward to doing more of that in the future. And when you get to be this age, having something like that in your life, not only is it really enhances our relationship to have that activity that we both do together, but just gives us the energy, and keeps us healthy and keeps us kind of young at heart as we move through midlife. So it's really been something that we both enjoyed. So, and a little bit about me specifically, and I mentioned I am from a large family, and I'm the oldest child. And I mentioned church. Church was always a part of my life and still is growing up, and we'll talk more about that in future episodes. I've always been pretty athletic, into music, but I've really been introverted, and in my professional life I've gotten beyond that. But when you think about when was the last time I dated somebody was well over 30 years ago, and so as we get back into this kind of mindset of dating people, I've got all these flashbacks of being this skinny little introverted kid who didn't have a lot of self-confidence. And sometimes I find myself, I'm right back in the hallways in high school, sweating, when a couple goes by and there's a female partner that I'm interested in, and so it's really been kind of interesting to kind of relive a lot of that. Unfortunately, it's a lot easier now because I have you and don't really have to worry about being that successful. But I've always been shy and quiet, and being in the lifestyle has really, really helped me be a whole lot more outgoing in a way that we approach people. And people really in the lifestyle are very easy to approach, very approachable. So that's made it a little bit easier to kind of grow into a more kind of aggressive role.
And on the other hand, I am an only child. My dad was in the military, so we moved around a lot, which was torture for me because I didn't have any brothers and sisters to hang out with until I managed to make new friends in the new neighborhood and the new school and everything. So I always kind of dreaded when we would have to move around. I was a good student. I was a rule follower. So breaking these rules and sneaking around now is kind of against my nature. And it's fun in one way, but it's still, it's those feelings are feelings that you kind of have to push down. And like Mr. Jones said, all those feelings can come flooding back. And it's been more than 30 years since you're in high school. But, sneaking around and breaking the rules and afraid you're going to get caught or get in trouble or whatever, it comes back, and it's hilarious because, like, we're grown-ups now, and it's okay. But some things just, I guess, never really go away. I was a big flirt in high school, though, and so that part is fun again because, when you're married, you don't flirt anymore. I mean, you can flirt a little bit, I guess, but, your priority is on your spouse. And, up to a year ago, he was everything I ever wanted or needed, and he is still everything I wanted or needed. But at the same time, we can approach couples together and flirt with them and kind of, invite them into our relationship. And that's just, it's so new and so foreign. It's scary and exciting at the same time. And it's just really, it's cool when you can kind of look at a couple and kind of assess the situation together. Well, what do you think? Well, what do you think? And kind of find a couple that you can both connect with.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that, I think, seeing you flirt with other people is an example of something that I have not experienced with you because of what you just said. And so initially, there can be some, wow, she's flirting with this person. But, after a while, I discover these new things about you, that just make you, it's new again, even after 30 years, something that I'm learning about you and experiencing with you. So, at first it feels a little bit strange, but after that, I kind of stand back and I go, look at her. I could see, I mean, we went to a meet and greet last night, and I could tell you kind of flipped a switch and started getting into that flirty mode. And, I don't know if you realize it as much, but I can certainly tell when you get into that mode, and it's really kind of cool to watch.
Well, I could tell.
Yeah.
I knew it. I wanted to flip my switch.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, as far as what's going on right now, like Mr. Jones said, we went to a meet and greet last night that was about 50 minutes from home. That's the first time we've ever done that. So we've been in the lifestyle almost a year now, and we have really laid low in and around our hometown. We've gone to Mexico to play, and you obviously you can't do that all the time. We wish we could do that all the time, but that's not really very practical or affordable. So we've tried to figure out how we can become more active in our community, but at the same time, preserve our anonymity, because we really are not interested in becoming known to other people as far as what our activities are. So we figured there's a group called Girls Uncorked, and it's actually, I think it was started on a Cassidy.
It is a Cassidy, yeah.
And it's a great community of women that come together once a month to, just hang out. And usually you go to somebody's house and you bring a bottle of wine or an appetizer. And it's just women in the lifestyle that can reach out to one another and actually have conversations that you can't have with your best friend unless she also happens to be in the lifestyle. So last night they had a couples meet and greet at a really cool restaurant/brewery about 50 minutes from our home. So we went ahead and got up the nerve and signed up for it and drove out there. And I think there were about 10 couples that came, and it was great. They were all different ages and all different levels of experience in the lifestyle. And the host and hostess were just the cutest couple, and they were just so welcoming. And, you kind of walk in and you have deer in the headlights look because you don't know anybody and you don't know what to expect. And they just made us feel so welcome. And actually everybody in the group did. And there were several other new couples there too. So we weren't the only ones that kind of didn't, know our way around, so to speak. And it was just a great experience.
Right. And so what we're going to do typically is talk about these sorts of things that are ongoing currently in our lives. But for this first episode, as we move into our second segment about what's going on in our lives, we kind of to do a summary of the past year, because it's almost been exactly a year since we found ourselves wading into the lifestyle.
Last November, we went to Desire Pearl, and we really didn't know that much about the lifestyle before we went there. We went there because it was a nice upscale clothing optional resort, and that's really what our initial interest in the place was. We had gone to Punta Cana on vacation the summer before that, like a few months before, last June of 2013, and we had been to Punta Cana before, and we love it there. We always stay at a really nice adults only resort, so it's just real laid back, and we had a great time. Well, when we were there last June, there were not a lot of women there that were going topless, and unfortunately, when we were there 3 years ago, there were lots of women going topless.
What do you mean, unfortunately?
Well, unfortunately for last June, because nobody was. So, 3 years prior to that, we had gone to Punta Cana for the first time, and there were, I guess, a lot of European women there, and they were going topless at the beach, which is okay in Punta Cana. They don't really want you topless at the pool or anywhere else, but on the beach, it's accepted. So I got up the nerve, and I, under a little bit of peer pressure from Mr. Jones, I took my top off a couple times when we were there. And, I was a little uncomfortable, but I wasn't the only one, so it was okay. Mr. Jones, I think, enjoyed it much more than I did. So when we went back to Punta Cana the second time, a year and a half ago, nobody was taking their top off, and there was no way I was going to be the only one. So he was
I was cheated.
Yeah, he was cheated, and he wasn't afraid to tell me about it. So I said, well, if you really want me to do that, we need to go to some place where I don't feel like I'm the only one. We need to go to a clothing optional resort. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, there is no way Mr. Jones is going to go to a clothing optional resort and drop his drawers in front of everybody. So I'm thinking, ha, 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 I'm going to get the last laugh on this one. So we... the next day when we were still in Punta Cana, it rained that day. So we had a balcony on our room. So we were sitting out on the balcony and enjoying the rain and playing on our iPads. And I started to research clothing optional resorts, and Desire, of course, floated to the top when I Googled it. And it just looks so beautiful. And then I went on to TripAdvisor and I got all these great reviews. And I didn't really understand. I saw the lifestyle mentioned a few times, but I didn't really understand what it was. We knew what swinging was. We had watched a couple TV shows and movies, and then of course you hear about key parties from back in the 1970s, but I didn't really know what the lifestyle was. until we actually started committing to going to Desire and then doing a little bit more research and getting on some forums. And all of a sudden we were like, wow, we've got some options here.
Book it. Book it.
Yeah, so we booked it, and then we started, kind of talking with other people on forums about, what this was all about, and just starting to have conversations with each other about, well, is this something we would be interested in? Because, Mr. Jones has always said, well, someday when we have a threesome, someday when we have a threesome.
You got to throw it in there.
And I would just giggle and ha, 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 and then we would, move on. But I'm thinking, okay, well, if this is a lifestyle-friendly resort and we've always been joking around about it, maybe I could find a girl to dance around with on the dance floor and, kind of flirt with her and, maybe kiss her or whatever. And we could rub our tits together and Mr. Jones would be like, yes. And that would be like our fantasy
Heaven.
fulfilled.
It would be heaven.
I thought that would be the end of it until we got there.
Well, and I think also that when we first booked it, we knew that you didn't have to be in the lifestyle to be a Desire and to take your clothes off. We thought, well, we'll just option for walking around nude, and then we'll observe the behavior and we'll talk to people, but we don't really have to, participate. But I think the time between when we booked the vacation and when we actually went, we continued to research. We hooked into Playboy TV, the show Swing, started watching that.
If you guys have not watched that show, that is really worthwhile to subscribe to Playboy TV and to watch those episodes. There's 4 seasons of Swing that have aired so far, and hopefully there's going to be a 5th one. It's a reality show, but they do such a good job of showing what entering the lifestyle is all about, and some like victories are celebrated and some obstacles are, encountered and overcome most of the time.
Right. And I think what we learned, one of the things that we learned from that show is, what does a healthy environment look like in the lifestyle? The way that they were honest and open and treated each other and were welcoming. And, the discussions between the newbies were, sometimes difficult, and a lot of times they were really excited about what they were doing. So it was a very good representation, especially looking back now that we've kind of been through this. We would highly recommend that you keep your eye out for that, or if you haven't looked at it, go ahead and subscribe, and the first 4 seasons are out there. And then we also were researching some of the podcasts I mentioned earlier. A couple of our favorites were the Swingercast, John and Allie from the West Coast, and the Swap Foos from the Midwest or from Texas. So there were a few that we kind of latched onto, and again, they helped to kind of mold for us this idea of what this lifestyle looks like and is. So that's part of how we educated ourselves prior to getting to Desire. So when we got there, before we left, we said, well, a lot of what we've been told and what we kind of ascribe to ourselves is, let's not preconceive any ideas. Let's not go there with a plan that says we've got to do this or we're not going to do this. Let's just go. Let's just have a good time. Let's just take it a day at a time. If we meet somebody, we'll just go with the flow, but we don't want to have, this idea that these are things that we are definitely not going to do or that we definitely are going to do. And so that really put us, we thought at that point in time that we were fairly well prepared for what we were going to experience. But then, of course, that wasn't the case, and mostly in a good way. So then we get to Desire, and, within a few hours, we, were completely clothing free and just...
It's like pulling off a Band-Aid. You just need to not even wear a bathing suit out to the pool. Just wear a cover up and just go ahead and get it over with. Because after about 10 minutes, you realize it's not a big deal. And nobody's really looking at you more than they're looking at everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes almost second nature. People are really comfortable, and yeah, of course you're looking at people. I mean, that's what you go there for. But and the whole environment, the whole it's a very sensual environment, very erotic, but it's also very safe, very secure,
Very respectful.
very respectful, and the staff is amazing. And not only they provide excellent service, but just so professional and so friendly. So the whole environment just makes you feel like, this is natural. This is the way people, should be. And then, before, I guess it was probably the end of the second day when we were in the hot tub, and I had 3 women on me at one time, and one giving me a blowjob, and the 2 of you on kissing me, and
I think 2 of them were giving you a blowjob, and I was kissing
you. What? I was so overwhelmed with what was going on. I just remember
there was no blood in his head at that moment,
and I really wanted to watch. I really wanted to see, but I couldn't get my eyes open. So
he had the dumbest grin on his face.
Yeah. So, and I think that was day 2 after we got there. And I said, you know what? I think this is the place for me. And the people were just so, friendly about it, and had so much fun with it. And, but again, in 24 hours, we went from being this nervous couple coming through the front gate to the second day being in the hot tub and having that happen. So,
and what was really cool about it is, of course, the other 2 ladies had asked if it was okay, and we were like, sure. And it was just like, oh my gosh, look at them giving him a blowjob. That's so cool. And I wasn't jealous at all. And Mr. Jones was just like, taking it all in and enjoying it. And it was fun. Like he said, it felt okay. And there were no like weird feelings. So, we knew that we were in for more than we had bargained for, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And so that was quite a week. We'll probably talk a whole lot more about desire, because we've been again since then, and we're getting ready to go again. So this is probably going to be a couple times a year, hopefully, that we get to experience desire. So when we got back, we kind of decided, we had to really just take a break and say, what in the world just happened over the last 7 days? And it took us a few months to process everything and talk through it. And, there were some things that really we had never felt before. And most of it was good. Some of it was a bit uncomfortable. And so it really took us kind of a while to unpack all of that as a couple, and really talk about what actually happened compared to what we thought had happened. And is this what the lifestyle is all about? And what do we want to do going forward? Right. And so that was a vacation. So we knew, when you're on vacation, it's not reality. So let's kind of approach this with a plan, like kind of how you and I handle a lot of things in our lives. And let's look at the next year, and let's experience this. Let's just be objective, and let's not make an assumption based on one experience, whether it's positive or negative. And, let's look at all these things that the lifestyle has to offer. So we decided to...
the first thing we did is we had met a couple in Mexico who lived on the West Coast, and he travels a lot for his job, and he ended up being in our neck of the woods. So his wife flew out, and they spent a long weekend with us. And that was fun, because that was when we realized, gosh, the lifestyle is more than just sex. It's about making friendships with like-minded people. And, I guess friends with benefits, I guess that's where that saying comes from. But, it's really fun to have people you can talk to anything about. So they came out a couple months after we had gotten home from Mexico, and they stayed at our house, and of course we had fun. And then Mr. Jones travels for his work as well. So he was planning a trip to the West Coast, and we were hoping to be able to find some lifestyle activities when we were out there. And he went on Cassidy and started looking around at different communities there. And coincidentally, about that same time, a couple from the West Coast had kind of sent us a flirt on Cassidy and started making connections with us through emails and stuff. And they ended up being about our age, and they were about half an hour from where we were going to be staying for this convention. And we hooked up with them in July and just had a great week at the convention and spending, evenings going out to dinner and breweries and spending time with this couple.
And it was really, since they were on the West Coast, it really required us to make a pretty good effort to get to know them before we went out. So we went from emailing back and forth within the Cassidy website to direct emails and direct text messages, and then we FaceTimed with them. So I thought we did a very good job, the four of us, kind of getting to know each other as face-to-face as that's possible these days, so that when we got out there, we didn't have that awkwardness of kind of getting to know each other. So,
and they were much more experienced than us, which was good because, they kind of helped break the ice. And because we had never, we were in, our only other experience had been when we were at Desire, which, the whole environment is set up in that seductive manner. So now here you are in like a regular restaurant in regular USA, and you're trying to figure out how to take a relationship from being just, oh, well, what do you do for a living? And how old are your kids? To, hey, what kind of play do you like? Are you soft swap? Are you full swap? Are you same room? And how do you transition into that? So they were much more experienced, and they were very good at guiding us through that unknown territory.
Yeah. Really great couple that we're still friends with and making plans to see again when we can. So, so that was the second time that we played with a couple, and right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was a great experience. It was a whole lot different than Mexico, but of course that's what we expected, and just had a great time that weekend. And
did we mention that they're like both really hot? We can't forget that part.
Yeah, we did kind of forget that. And that's what, that's another thing that, I'm the one that does most of the correspondence and keeping up with Cassidy and keeping up with the messaging. And so I've had to learn, because I'll see a couple and I'll see the woman, of course, and I'll know whether I'm attracted to her or not. And then I've had to, there's a few times where I was like certain that I would show you a couple and you would say, oh yeah, he's hot, or I'm attracted to him. And you go, it doesn't really do anything. And I'm like, really? So this couple in California, I said, well, what do you think about him? And you were like, yeah, he's attractive, and she is too. So it was not just that. As a matter of fact, it was probably more importantly, it was the connection that we had as four people, and the connection we made, the conversations that we've started in the relationship that we'll have with them, hopefully for a long time. So that was another type of connection that we made. Then we decided, we're not quite ready to get into the local scene because we're afraid, that we might run into somebody that we know. So we decided to go to Naughty in New Orleans, which was a lifestyle conference in New Orleans, Louisiana in August, just this past August. And the idea there was, I go to a lot of work conferences, and this was exactly like a work conference. You got the hotel was included. There were agendas every day. There were sessions from starting at 11 o'clock in the morning till about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you could sign up for Swinging 101 or BDSM, Advanced BDSM, or lifestyle cruising and what that's like, and erotic massage techniques, and just about anything that you can think of. There were people there that had breakout sessions that you could attend. And so this was more of a way to get away, get to a city where we had never visited before, kind of immerse ourselves in the culture down there. And
the hotel was right on Bourbon Street. And it was amazing. So you had all these workshops you could go to, or you could blow off the workshops and just go party on Bourbon Street all day, because and they made it like easy to do both because the workshops were kind of, late morning, early afternoon. And then in the afternoon, there were two different, like bar takeovers right on Bourbon Street. They like from, 12 to 3, there would be a takeover at one bar. And then at 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, you would move down the street a little bit to a different bar. And they would have like really different atmospheres. So there was always something for everybody. And it was great because they were takeovers. So you had to wear a badge all week when you were there to get into all the different events. And so when you walked into a bar, you could it was okay if you were flirting with another couple or you were kissing another couple or, ladies were flashing their boobs or whatever because nobody else was in there. There were no families with kids in there. It was just a big old bar full of crazy swingers.
Yeah. And then there would be an opportunity to go out to dinner. And then later in the evening, there would be a theme. And so we would dress up and go to an after dinner kind of a dance or gathering in the hotel. There was Colette, the swinger club, was open a couple of nights for us. And we went to, there was a parade one night and we went to a burlesque show. I mean, it was just so very well planned. Highly recommend, no matter what phase of this that you happen to be in. We were extremely comfortable. And as Mrs. Jones was saying earlier, that safety and security and trust and respect. And that in the hotel, the security was really good. And the ladies never really felt, like there were just strangers walking through and there was security at the elevators. And then anyway, after the theme party, then all of the playrooms opened on the second floor, and the entire second floor was nothing but these playrooms. And
so the second floor where all the conference rooms were. So all the conference rooms were turned into these different themed playrooms. It was amazing.
Right. And so basically that was one day, and you just woke up and did that same thing for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then half a day on Sunday. So we certainly learned a lot. We met another couple there, and they're, even though they aren't in our community, they're about an hour and a half away. And so we've been able to, see them again a couple of times since, we can drive, to see each other. But again, another couple that, a similar sort of relationship that we have. And we really connected with them. But we met so many people down there and had so many experiences. And I guarantee you we'll do an entire podcast on Naughty in New Orleans and the play experiences that we had there, and also some of the more interesting people that we met and the conversations that we had.
Mr. Jones forgot to mention that before we went to Naughty New Orleans, we went to a somewhat local event in July called Midsummer Night's Dream, and it was put on at a private estate about an hour and a half from our house. There were about 250 people that attended, and it's so hard to describe because it was so visual, the way they turned this estate into this absolute like fairyland. It was incredible. There was a pool, and they had a mermaid in a pool, and she would talk to you through these stones she had with all these little sensual sayings on the stones, and she would rearrange them into sentences so that she could flirt with you, or she could get you to talk to your partner, and she was just really, really fun. And then they had like a Cirque du Soleil show over the pool. They had erected this big scaffolding, and the girl would be, she would have the long scarves and do all the acrobatics right over the water. And they had an amazing DJ with a dance floor, and they had wait staff there. It was BYOB, but it was professional wait staff there to mix your drinks for you. And then they had like this 6-car garage in the back of the estate, and all 6 bays were a different type of room. Like there was a Sibian room with couches around the Sibian, so you could obviously play on that and have an audience. And one of the bays had like 6 king-size mattresses all put together, and it was like this huge, crazy group sex room. But then in the back of the estate, where it was just kind of lawn area, they set up these beautiful cabanas with all of the like the tulle draped around them to kind of provide just a little bit of privacy. And there was just enough lighting that you could kind of see what was going on, but you didn't feel like you had spotlights glaring on you. So it was really sensual and romantic. And so there was just like every type of environment or fantasy that you could have gone there with that night. You would have had an opportunity to fulfill that. It was just incredible.
Right. And that was a lot of fun. It was a different experience. It really put us in a position, because we didn't know anybody in advance. It really puts you in a position where you've got to show up at 9 or 10 o'clock at night and kind of find somebody if you're going to play, if you don't know somebody. And we did meet another couple that we just chatted with, but that night we ended up just playing with each other. And when I say just playing with each other, I think I have to clarify that a bit and say, if that's the worst thing that's going to happen in the evening, then it's great. I mean, that's the ultimate.
So we played with each other in this like cabana area. They also had like these big silk throws just like thrown out on the grass, and they must have sprayed. I get eaten by mosquitoes, but they must have sprayed because there were no bugs. And it was like, for July on the East Coast, it's usually like hot and humid, but it was the perfect weather that night. And so Mr. Jones and I we had sex on one of these beautiful silk throws, and there were probably like 40 people standing around or at various stages of having sex with one another. And it was amazing. Just how hot that experience was, even though we were only playing with each other. There was another couple that we were talking to were right next to us, but we didn't really interact with them. But, we were right next to each other having sex, and then all those other people watching us, they were probably watching us because they were waiting for us to get up so they could have sex. But
right. No, I think they were. I don't think they.
I think we provided entertainment while they were waiting.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than Disney when you're waiting in line, because there's all kinds of things going on to keep you entertained while you're waiting, and so I don't think people really mind that much. So that was a one night affair, kind of a party. So another type of experience in the lifestyle that we intentionally put ourselves in, just again so we could get a different perspective and learn about what that is like and whether we like that sort of thing or not. Did I forget anything else, or what happened after Naughty in New Orleans?
Well, we went back to Desire.
Right.
And we had a great week. We actually split our week. There's 2 Desire resorts just south of Cancun, and they're only about 3 miles apart from each other. There's Desire Riviera Maya, which is the original one, and then there's a new resort called Desire Pearl, and I think it's been open like a little over 2 years. They both have the same format as far as what they offer, as far as entertainment and all the different services and everything, but there's just a different vibe at each one. The Desire Riviera Maya, it seems to be more of a party atmosphere, and Desire Pearl is more of a sensual atmosphere. Desire Pearl is not boring. I mean, if you read about that or whatever, it's just all old, boring people that go there. Okay, well, yeah, we're kind of old, but we're not boring, and we have had amazing experiences at Desire Pearl. I mean, there are people there willing to play and willing to have just as much fun as you want to have with them.
Yeah, we definitely could have engaged a whole lot more. And we're gonna talk about this in a future episode, and we'll go into the differences between the 2 resorts. And but really, the characteristic, it seems like every trip that we go on, it takes on its own personality and its own kind of thing, and that's really, I think, attributed to kind of how we approach our vacations. You can make a mistake of saying, you know what, last year when we went to Pearl, this happened, and so we're going to go back and we expect the same thing to happen, and you can really fall into a trap if you do that. But yeah, so we spent 4 nights at RM and then 4 nights in Pearl, and our claim to fame during this trip was we didn't play with anybody but ourselves, but we never had sex in our room, and that was amazing. So
on our balcony, on jacuzzi beds, in the playroom, pool beds, just about anywhere on the resort, but we just never got around to having sex in our own bed.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but
I don't know.
But again, we met a lot of great people and had a great time, and it just so happens that particular trip we just connected with each other, and we never ran into that couple that kind of just captured us in our imagination and never really regretted that. Yeah, and we're getting ready to go back again here in a few weeks, and
who knows
what's going to happen.
Stay tuned.
Next time.
We'll let you know.
Yeah. So we'll talk more about desire in a future episode, but really again had just an amazing time there. Can't recommend that enough if you can get there.
So then at the end of the summer, again through Cassidy, we were contacted by a couple that are about an hour away from us. They had read our profile and seen in our profile that, I think we had mentioned that we were fairly new to the lifestyle, and they were brand new to the lifestyle, and just kind of were wondering if we would be interested in getting together with them for drinks to just kind of talk about our experiences. And I don't know, it kind of felt like they almost were looking for mentors, I guess. And Mr. Jones and I were like, well, we're not very experienced, but we can certainly get together with them and share what we know. And I guess the really intriguing part about this couple is that they were very much younger than us. And at first that was really intimidating because, like we shared a few minutes ago, we do have adult daughters, and we were like, I don't know, this is going to be kind of weird. But we said, well, we're doing drinks. Okay. How much trouble can you get into having drinks somewhere with somebody? Right. So they were just, you could just tell by the way they were communicating with us through email that they were a pretty connected couple, and they weren't, it didn't seem like they had any ulterior motives that they weren't sharing with us. So we went ahead and decided that we would have drinks with them, and that is turned into a pretty cool relationship.
Yeah. And I think, again, what we're learning is that these labels that we put on people, and I'm guilty of doing it myself, but that evening and the 2 evenings that we went out to dinner with them, the conversation never was awkward. You would think with a difference in age, what are we going to have in common? What are we going to be able to talk about? And never experienced any of that. And then honestly, after we spent an evening with them out, age never really entered my mind again. I mean, it was just, you could tell they have a solid relationship. You can tell that they value each other the way that we do, and had respect for us in our relationship. And, so we have learned, we can see the type of relationship that we have after 30 years doesn't mean we can't see that in others who have just gotten together or have been married just 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, whatever that is. We're very good at kind of recognizing it because we believe we have it ourselves. And that's the case with this couple. So we really had a good time with them. Ended up spending a weekend with them here. And I think we're going to see them here and again in a couple weeks. So that probably takes us through the past year. So to summarize, we went to Desire a couple times, went to Not in New Orleans, the conference, went to the party at Midsummer, gone to a meet and greet,
done some individual dating,
did some dating locally, did some long distance dating. So we think we've pretty much.
We haven't done a house party.
Well, that's true. We haven't done a house party yet because we haven't really found any.
No.
Around here.
And again, we don't want to find one too close to home. So I guess that's probably the last thing we need to check off our list if we're trying to get the full range of experience. To end each one of our podcasts, we have something that we always share when we come home from any kind of a lifestyle encounter that we have. And I always call it, what's your snapshot? So usually during an evening when we're playing with another couple, or it doesn't even have to be playing, it could just be out to dinner with them or whatever. There, you know how you always have like that one takeaway, that one mental image, or that one like sound bite of something that was said that night. For me, it's usually a visual image. And I guess the one I wanted to share tonight was we were on kind of our second date with this younger couple that we mentioned that we have recently met. And we were at a beautiful restaurant. It was a nice fall evening, and we were at a beautiful restaurant in a nice city near a river, and sitting outside sharing a meal together. And we kind of had a private table, so we felt like we could have, open and frank conversation with one another. And the first time we got together with them, it was very surface level as far as talking about our sexual experiences and what we were looking for in a couple that we wanted to interact with. So this was our second date. So we were a little bit more forthcoming, because I think both couples knew that we wanted to end up playing eventually. And we were trying to figure out, where we stood as far as experience and what kind of fantasies we wanted to have fulfilled, and those types of conversations. So we were talking about oral sex. And the other lady in the couple, she was talking about how she had never gone down on another woman. She had had a woman go down on her before, but she had never gone down on another woman. She was explaining this to us. And in the meantime, our server had come up from behind her and was just patiently waiting to see if anybody needed anything. So the server's standing there listening to this conversation, and the poor lady that was explaining her level of experience with the oral sex was clueless that the server was behind her. So, just after she finished her conversation, the server said, "Can I get you guys anything?" And she was just perfectly professional and went on her way. And we were just laughing because, where else but in the lifestyle would you be talking about the intimate details of oral sex at this beautiful restaurant on a gorgeous fall evening?
Yeah, that's great dinner conversation, if you ask me. So that's your snapshot.
That's just one of them.
That's just one of them. So
stay tuned.
Yeah, so my snapshot is, I'm going to change my snapshot to, you mentioned earlier, and you know what? This is the second time we kind of did a practice podcast on this, and so I'm going to change from what I said the first time. And I have to say that Mrs. Jones has dressed the part tonight. So we made sure that we had some afternoon appetizers and happy hour before we podcasted today. And she is across from me in a leopard print. Is it a dress?
You could call it that.
A cross between lingerie and a dress. And
I dressed for dinner. We're getting ready to cook dinner.
A lot of cleavage that I've had to look at for the past hour across from this microphone. And earlier you were talking about the fact that I kept throwing this out about having a threesome. And I'm not going to say that every guy has this fantasy, but I'm going to go ahead and say every guy has this fantasy. And, every opportunity that I got, I don't know that I said it a lot, but I have said a number of times over 30 years, well, when we have our first threesome, and maybe I'm like Johnny Appleseed, I'm planting these seeds, and eventually, they're going to grow one day, never really imagining that they would. But my snapshot, when we went to Desire the first time and we met this other couple, and you didn't really know, Mrs. Jones, you really didn't know if you were attracted to other women, or
I didn't think I was.
Yeah, you didn't think you were, but you had said, well, if we found the right person, that you might do it just for me, just so I could see. But you never really said that you would, have oral sex or be with this woman. It was, I would kiss or flirt with her. And anyway, we met this couple, and you two ladies kind of just connected, and we went into the playroom at Pearl, and the two of you just, for some reason, just connected and came together and started making out. And I I'm glad for my sake that I didn't pass out, but I found myself not breathing based on what I was seeing, and the other guy of the lady that you were with, he had a grin, ear to ear, and he and I just kind of blended into the sofa and sat there and watched you two connect. And I can't describe. I can only say that if you're and ladies, if you ever find an opportunity to do that, you won't be disappointed as far as the guys are concerned, because it was an amazing snapshot and an image that, and you've done it since then, but that connection in the first time, and the fact that for 30 years, I kind of have this fantasy, and then it's playing itself out in front of me, and I just can kind of keep looping that film back over and over in my mind. And so not only was I watching you with another woman, but then you turned into a bit of the aggressor. You pushed her back and went down on her. And that, again, kind of just shocked me. It floored me. And then, I was realizing that, wait a minute, she's not doing this for me anymore. She's liking this. And so during that 15 or 20 minutes that you two were together, it was just an amazing thing to see. And so that
it was amazing to experience as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit out of breath over here as I'm thinking of it. But you went down on her, and you did a good job, and she went down on you, and you had an orgasm.
And she did a good job.
Yeah, and so it was really amazing to watch and experience. And then afterwards, and I'm not sure when afterwards, but you came up to me and you said, "You know what? I like licking pussy." And again, hearing those words come out of your mouth was just something that, I'm like, this is we're coming back here. We're gonna, when can we come back here? When can we do this again? So if you were trying to get me hooked into this lifestyle, if that was your ploy, then I'll just say that it worked. So my snapshot is just.
Ladies, if you want a vacation to desire, that's all you got to do.
Wow. So anyway, that's I've kind of lost my train of thought, and I'm a little bit.
That was your snapshot.
Yeah, that was my snapshot.
Yes.
And
one thing I've learned over the past year is that I'm attracted to people that I can tell are confident or comfortable in their own skin. And I really think that is the beauty that you're looking for when you're trying to find a couple that you can connect with in the lifestyle.
Right. So we are going to close out now. I think I'd like to let you know that episode 2, we're going to talk more in depth about the rest of that story and what happened the rest of the week at Desire. And we'll talk a little bit more about the resort itself. So we'll kind of do a little bit of review, but we'll also talk about the play that we did and
how we reacted to that play.
Definitely how we reacted to that play, and then subsequent to that, I mean, that was really, I think just to give you a little bit of a teaser, there are times like, and maybe the illustration that I'll throw out is like when we go to look at a house or we go buy a car, because normally what happens is I'll say, "Hey, let's go. I want to stop in here and look at cars," and you'll say, "Well, we're not buying one." And I said, "No, we're not buying one. I just want to look." And then we start looking, and then we drive one, and then we go in, and then we find ourselves at the desk talking to the people, and then all of a sudden we're like, "Hey, maybe we are gonna buy a car today." And that's kind of what this lifestyle has been about. We said, you know what, we're just going to try it. We're going to test it. Maybe we're not going to do anything. We're just going to watch. And then when we got down there, we found ourselves, you know what, maybe we are going to do this.
Yeah.
And so it was that decision, even though we talked about it before we went down there, the fact that we actually hooked up with a couple and experienced everything there was to experience in the lifestyle that week, we came back with our head spinning. And so we'll talk, a lot about that and how we kind of recovered from that and decompressed and learned and moved on. So there are one thing that we would certainly covet from you all, and that is your feedback and your questions and any comments that you would have for us. We will, on our website, wegotathing.com, if you can leave a comment there. And then you can also find the show notes from episode number 1, and everything I'm about to tell you, you'll be able to find there in the show notes. So you can contact us through several different, from Twitter. You can follow us at We Got a Thing, and it's GOTTA, We Got a Thing. We have a Google voicemail account, and the number for that is 571-36-SWING or 571-367-9464. Feel free to leave us a voicemail. Or you can email us at wegotathing@gmail.com. And you can find us on iTunes. I'm not sure when we're going to be up on iTunes. It may take a week or two after we submit, but you'll find us on iTunes eventually. And then on the Cassidy site, you'll find us at We Got a Thing there as well. So thanks for hanging in there and listening to our first episode. We are Mr. and Mrs. Jones, and we got a thing.
What's your thing?
Okay, welcome everyone to episode number 1 of the We Gotta Swing.